again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. My name is Mars, and today we're going to be talking about who the best tanks are in the global version of the game. And before I get started, you have to listen to what I am about to tell you because it is more important than anything else. Yes, I'm doing a ranking list, and normally I don't like lists like this, but let me tell you, just because a unit does not score very high on my personal list does not mean that they are not good, and it does not mean that they are not viable, okay? So if you come at me in the comments because I ranked your favorite tank lower than you would have liked, don't at me, okay? This is my disclaimer. Every single 7-star tank is viable for something in the current meta and for many of the future fights beyond. So don't get mad just because I value things perhaps differently than you, or just because, you know, a tank that you like is maybe a little bit harder to work with. So that being said, let's jump into what I would consider to be the two worst 7-star tanks in the Global Edition, and I have to clarify some of my parameters, of course. I'm going off of their ability to do the job of tank, okay? Viktor Marchenko's an amazing unit because he's a very strong damage dealer, okay? As far as the whole tanking thing, he's just okay. His provokes are okay. His defense can get super high. He's got a lot of strong utility, but the fact that he doesn't have an AoE cover means that he's going to be limited in many fights if you're using him as your tank. Now, a lot of people will use him as a provoke tank with very high defense, and then use him as a finisher, you know, when it comes time to just deal a ton of damage to the enemy. So, he's definitely a good tank, a good damage dealer, for sure. But he's here because technically he's a tank. In my opinion, he's a damage dealer with a provoke. So, you know, don't be mad at me, but that's the way that I see Viktor Marchenko. He's a great unit, a great damage dealer, and an okay provoke tank. And speaking of provoke tanks that are just okay, Elfrida falls into that category as well. She does have a strong amount of utility with things like Sub-Zero Casket that allow her some pretty strong one-turn KO support with a 100% Ice Imperil. That'll come in handy for any of y'all who have Christine, or Freya or other ice damage dealers that you want to just really pump out turn 1 damage with. Otherwise, she's kind of just okay as far as provoke tanks go, and she doesn't have an AoE cover, so again, her application is limited. She can counter with some really solid damage, which makes her an absolute menace in the arena. But otherwise, it's hard to recommend her because she is pretty limited. Yeah, I mean, again, she has that mix of dealing damage and doing tanking, and neither of which she's exceptionally amazing at, making her kind of just okay at both. That being said, there's a lot that you can do with her, so don't let this stop you. And I do have to say that a lot of my remarks are guided at people who are trying to decide what they should use their unit of choice tickets on, right? Because we've gotten 20 plus of them through the game at this point. Some of us may even have more, and then we have the UoC tickets as well that we can use on limited time units. So this is mostly to help people decide, like, okay, is it worth it to invest in this tank for the purpose of tanking? And for these two, I just have to say no. Do Viktor if you want some nice finishing damage. Do Elfrida if you want some Ice Imperils, or to just make to ruin people's day in the arena. That's what she's for as well. So they're definitely my bottom picks. Next, we're going to look at, I'm going to call these the A-listers, because above them is going to be the S tier. Okay, A-lister meaning that they are great tanks. They can do the job for you for any of the content that we have now and much of the content in the future. And I've ranked them from left to right, starting at the bottom. Bosch is a unit that I unfortunately kind of have to rank a little bit lower simply because his kit does not synergize with his tanking very well at all. Having tanks and breakers rolled into the same unit doesn't really increase slot efficiency unless you find a way to work around it. So many fights do punish you if you don't have tanks and breaks up on the first turn. And so him doing both jobs of tanking and breaking, kind of a no-go most of the time. One way to get around it is to use him turn 1 as a breaker, and then to use a cooldown skill like Lotus Mage Fina's, that's an AoE re-raise, so that your party can survive. just in case, like, you know, you do the break, but you don't have the cover up. All right, AoE re-raise, we're fine, moving on with our lives. Now Bosch can do both. That's definitely a way to do it. In my opinion, I think it puts too many critical rolls into a single basket. So if Bosch goes down, you're really in trouble because your breaks might drop, your tanking might drop. Like, it's a lot of faith to put in a single unit, and if it works, and it works super well. But if not, it can be quite difficult. So, but as far as a tank unit himself, he's got a lot of great passives. He counters by healing himself. All around a fantastic unit, and the fact that he can cover both physical and magical damage makes him extremely versatile, which means that for many new players, he's going to be a very ideal tank to use. So, as far as is he amazing, future-proof, meta, I think he's a great tank. I don't think he's anywhere close to the best tank in the game. So, sorry Bosch, love you, will be using you, but not the best. Speaking of tanks that are not the best, Barret is probably down there next to Bosch, simply because Barret, he has the same problem of having damage and breaking rolled into, tanking and breaking rolled into the same kit. That being said, he does also offer some reasonable damage abilities as well, and he can't, I mean, he's a good magic tank, so all around, he is a very good unit. But again, when you have breaking and tanking in the same unit, it doesn't make your life easier on the first turn. Of course, you can work around it, like I said, but yeah, the other drawback is that his, let's see, mine isn't leveled yet, but his limit burst break is very strong, but it is only single target. So that is also something to keep in mind. That being said, he does damage as like a third factor of his utility, and he brings a lot to the table for sure. So definitely a very good tank. But as far as doing the role of tanking and then the other support things that he brings, I think he's lower than most, but a hair better than Bosch because he can do some pretty solid damage and open up the ability to use one chainer with Barret, and then you can use a finisher as your other damage dealer, which for some people that may be a more viable strategy than running two chainers. So Barret, super cool unit, love his sprite. I think that as far as the tank role goes, he could be a little bit better. Now speaking of better, we have our honey here, Lilith, who in my opinion is probably the best cover tank that does not have a provoke skill, because I tend to value tanks that can cover and provoke above ones that can cover only, because a lot of times in fights you're able to run just a solo tank who can provoke and cover it all. That being said, that's not totally limiting. She, like Barret, does a fair amount of damage with her different damage skills that scale off of spirit, so they're not conflicting at all. That is kind of an annoyance with Barret, is that his damage abilities scale off of magic, which he has a lot of magic and spirit passives that are tied together, but it means that it's harder to build him for damage resistance. That, and he can't equip shields, which is kind of moronic for a tank, but, you know, I digress. Lilith can equip a shield, and she can do a fair amount of damage, but more important than that, I think she has one ability that makes her incredibly useful, and that is Counter Curse. And this is break cleanse on herself and break immunity buff for the entire party. This is huge. Breaks really hurt your party, and for her to be able to buff resistance to breaks as part of her rotation, that's a pretty big deal in my opinion. Now CG Folka, who should be coming in the next month or so, she can also buff resistance to breaks as well, meaning that, you know, Lilith's not the only viable option, but if you want a tank to do that, she's literally the only 7-star tank who can buff that. And she can also cast re-raise on herself, which synergizes super well with her tank kit. So all in all, she covers both physical and magical damage, she does damage, she buffs break resistance. Overall, she's outstanding. I think her biggest weakness is that her health passives, her HP passives are super low, so you need to roll her Midnight Star in Item World until you get that rare enhancement, because that'll give you an extra 30%. So, all in all, I think Lilith is probably the best non-provoke tank option there is, because she's excellent. Amazing. Love her. Now moving on to Gladiolus. This is probably this is a point of debate for some people. I think Gladiolus outranks the other tanks below him simply because he has a provoke option as part of his kit, and the dude is made of 100% USDA grade beef. Like, the dude does not die. He can get so much health through his passives, he can get a ton of defense, extremely tanky, extremely fun to use. He counters damage to fill limit burst gauges, but that's about the extent of it. So that's one of the big problems with Gladiolus, is that he has his intercept, which is his physical cover, and that's his only AoE cover, and then his provoke is tied to his limit burst, which admittedly is not very hard to fill, but it's an inconvenience for sure. Aside from that, he doesn't have much to speak of as far as utility goes, and I think that that's Gladiolus' main drawback, because he'll intercept, and then he can LB provoke, and then what? He doesn't have Entrust, he doesn't have any other support skills that make your team function better in any way. So for that reason, I do have to rank him at the bottom of the provoke cover tanks. I will add an asterisk to him, though, that Royal Guard is an ability that you should keep note of, because if you run a double or a triple Gladiolus team, which is a little bit insane sounding, because that would mean you would need like 2 of your own and then a friend's, or 3 7-star Gladiolus. However, if you do actually happen to have that, Royal Guard is a single target cover that covers all types of damage and mitigates it into the floor. So Gladiolus becomes indestructible, and your target that he's covering cannot be hit by any kind of damage at all. Many covers can be bypassed by, I believe it's fixed type damage, and I may be botching the terminology on that, but there are uncoverable attacks for AoE cover, but Royal Guard will still cover it because it is a type of damage, if I understand it correctly. Now, I could be wrong, so if I'm wrong, correct me on that, but the big deal is that it works against all types of damage, meaning that whoever he's covering is indestructible. So people will run a couple of him, and then they'll run their 2 or 3 units that they want to take with him, and then nobody dies, because Gladiolus mitigates all of the damage into nothing. So definitely a niche that puts him above other tanks in my opinion, but that being said, yeah, he does have a lot of limitations. So yeah, moving right along, Wilhelm. This is probably going to be a little bit controversial for me to say, but I think he's not in S tier as far as tanking is concerned anymore, because his support kit is also a little bit wimpy. Now, he is better than Gladiolus in the tanking role because he does have his provoke that he can use on demand, as well as his AoE cover that he can use on demand, meaning that as far as physical tanking goes, he's got what he needs to be super simple, easy to set up, and extremely reliable. As far as utility goes, he at least has a couple of breaks that he can rely on. However, I've not really ever used them. You can if you have to or you need to, but I've not used him a lot. He can use absolute defense for threshold attacks and things like that that would ordinarily kill him. And then of course he has draw attacks, which is super helpful for when he needs to be re-raised or whatever. You can increase the number of things that target him, and he can counter damage with attacks to fill limit burst, and he can buff limit burst fill rate for the party. So those are all very, very good things. I think that Wilhelm is a fantastic tank. A lot of people love him. I love him. I love all the tanks, by the way. Just because I'm ranking some above others doesn't mean I don't like them, but I think Wilhelm is probably top of the A-listers. He is a very good tank as far as physical tanks go. In the future, he may struggle in some regards because his equipment flexibility for draw attacks items is not as wide as units like CGC Cart, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But overall, excellent tank. He's got you covered for now and for a very long time. So, with that being said, we've come to the S tier tanks. And this, again, totally my opinion. You're allowed to disagree. It doesn't mean any of these other tanks are bad or unviable or anything like that. You can use any of them. But having played with all of the tanks in the game, I have all of them, I have used all of them, I love every one of them, and so I'm just picking my favorite children, okay? I feel like I'm speaking from a place of authority when I say that Awakened Rain is kind of towards the bottom of S tier. Now, this does not mean that he's bad. He's an outstanding tank, but he is limited. He does have some drawbacks that really get under my skin, which is why I don't use him as much as I thought I might, or I wished I might. So, number one, he does have his provoke, which is important, and he does have his AoE magical cover, because he is a magic tank. So this is basically the bread and butter that you need for a good provoke and cover tank. However, standout is only for 2 turns. So if you are using him as that solo tank that covers and provokes, you are locked to a 2-turn rotation and you can't do anything else. And he does have some solid support stuff that you can use if you had that extra turn, but if you're using him to provoke, you cannot do that, at least until his enhancements. I believe his enhancements grant him additional duration on his cover. His purification cooldown skill is really nice to have. Astral Guard is a cooldown that decreases the amount of magical damage he takes, and I use Scarlet Healing a lot because it's 0 MP to restore MP. You just consume some LB gauge. It's a really nice skill to have, but other than that, a lot of his utility kind of ends there as far as practical utility, because he does have, you know, a magic break right here. He does have, you know, another skill here to reduce damage, but you're not going to use most of those. Most of the time, you're going to be using Energy Wall. That's going to be his number 1 skill. Number 2 skill is going to be Standout, and then after that's probably Purification and Astral Guard. So, and Scarlet Healing. So those 5 skills are probably what you're going to use the most. They're very good. But he is kind of hamstrung if you do have to provoke and cover, which for me bumps him down a little bit, especially compared to some of the more recent tank offerings that we have. So speaking of recent tank options, now this should be proof positive that I'm not biased, because I ranked White Knight Noel lower than people might have expected. And that's simply because I think that as far as if you're trying to make the decision of like, well, which tank should I invest in, White Knight Noel is lower than some other ones, and we'll talk about why. So first of all, important thing to note, his Bring It On is the most disgustingly broken tank skill in the entire game. Period. Take note of this. It is so good because it grants 50% physical mitigation and 50% magical mitigation, meaning that if you have something like Zargoboth's Limit Burst Up, which grants 50% generic mitigation, all of those stack together to make him actually a tank. He is invincible, which I love that so much. White Knight Noel is, I think I saw a post where somebody was saying White Knight Noel is like 40 or 45% tankier than Awakened Rain, which is absolutely insane. And it's due to that. Bring It On with that stacking mitigation. It is so good. At 7 stars, they gave him I'll Protect You, which is his AoE magic cover. And the best thing about him is that he can do both of them, his provoke and his cover, and they last 3 turns each, meaning that he has the ability to use other skills on his 3rd turn. So if you want an Ice Imperil, you can Glacial Wave, or if you want to use this, which, what does this do again? Ice and Wind Resistance for allies and reduce damage taken for self. That's by 75%, which means, hi, for 1 turn, literally nothing can kill me. Good cooldowns. This also boosts his magic, restores HP and MP. Turbo mode is triple cast. Very nice. He's got a lot of really good stuff going for him, honestly. And he has all those options because he only requires 2 out of 3 turns to maintain his taking rotation. Now, another thing to take note of is his Limit Burst, which you can't see a whole lot of detail here, but it boosts magic defense and spirit and restores MP for all allies, and that can be up to 120%, meaning that if you maintain a 3-turn rotation, like for example if you want to use someone like Lunera who has a cooldown skill that buffs all allies for 3 turns, you don't have 100% uptime with that. However, you can use White Knight Noel on turn 3 to use his Limit Burst to carry over some additional buffs so that you don't go unbuffed for any turns at all. You can keep 100% uptime on buffs, Lunera can do damage, and because it boosts magic, it's supporting your magic damage dealer. Just as an example of like ways to synergize that with people. So I think that that's super awesome to just have that as an ability. If nothing else, you can use it to restore MP to your party. I do believe when it's maxed out, it's 40% or something like that, which is quite a lot of MP. So excellent unit, great utility. The ability to chain with people if necessary with Freeze or Tornado is awesome. Just a super thick kit with a super thick unit. He is the best provoke tank in the game, hands down. No other tank compares in terms of provoking ability. So yeah, high contender for UoC, for the FF UoCs if you have them. But I do believe Demon Rain is slightly better. Demon Rain comes in at number 3 for a couple reasons. Number 1 is because he... Where is it? He counters like an absolute madman, I think is the main reason. He counters like crazy, and he has Entrust, which in the 7-star era, limit bursts are critical. Limit bursts are everything. They are the most powerful abilities in the game, and they can unlock so many things that enable your party to do disgusting combos. So having Entrust on a 7-star tank who has a 3-turn rotation, basically, to allow them to use Entrust on a 3rd turn is indispensable. It is so helpful. So with Demon Rain, he can use Defend, which is a very strong provoke of 50% mitigation for 3 turns. He can use Demonic Cover, which is his AoE physical cover, and then you can use Entrust on turn 3, and you can keep those super fat limit bursts filled. It really helps with units like Zargaboth or Ayaka with really amazing limit bursts that require a lot of crystals. That, and he counters a ton, and that many counters means that it's much easier for him to fill his own limit burst as well as other people's. So for that reason, the Provoke, Cover, and Entrust combo, because of those 3, I have to put Demon Rain towards the top, which is why you're probably not surprised Mercenary Ramza is just a hair ahead of him, because Mercenary Ramza does basically the same thing. However, he does have some more innate elemental resistances. He is immune to status ailments innately, which is amazing. So even though he is a little bit less tanky innately than some of the other tanks, the fact that you don't have to equip a discernment or a ribbon or whatever to be immune to status ailments means that he has an extra slot that other tanks might not. Now, in addition to that, he does have the Entrust, Provoke, and Cover combo. The reason that I put him a hair above Demon Rain is because he also has a Magic Cover, and you can keep 100% uptime on this. He just has to not die, which it's not that hard. Mercenary Ramza is super tanky, especially if you come with some of those elemental resistances right out of the gate. This is without his TMR equipped. He gets like an extra, I think, 10% with his TMR equipped, so amazing. He has some LB fill rate, which is amazing, especially if he's going to be an Entruster for you. He also has counter so that he can fill limit bursts for himself and his party. Just an excellent unit all around. He also has Ultima, which I've found to be super useful for kill with kill with magic missions. So that way I don't have to think to myself, oh, I need to use fire that's equipped to my unit with Ifrit or whatever to kill the boss. Ultima has a cast time that lasts 3 days, so you can just cast that and then kill the boss, and then when this comes down, you get the kill with magic mission. So, tiny little perk, but it is awesome. He also has Esunaga if you need it in a pinch, as well as Raise, which is also super handy. He does also have a really wide equipment selection, which helps quite a lot with tankiness, but overall, I have to rank Mercenary Ramza as the number 2 tank in the game because of this Entrust, Provoke, and Cover combo, with the additional option of doing Magic Cover 100% of the time, and plus the status ailment immunities, plus the elemental resistances. I mean, he has it all as far as tanks are concerned. He may not be as tanky as White Knight Noel or as tanky as Wilhelm or whatever, but in my opinion that doesn't really matter because he comes with so much in his kit and it doesn't conflict with itself. You know, it all synergizes super well. You can use him as a breaker with things like Blade of Justice, but that's a really nice thing to just have just in case. Not necessary. His kit is plenty thick without it. So, without further ado, number 1 tank in the game, to nobody's surprise, is going to be Sieg, and that's for a host of reasons. Number 1, he's the most beautiful character in the entire game, so he has that going for him. Additionally, he is just super tanky. His passives are excellent. He has draw attacks, which is excellent. He has a better equipment selection than Wilhelm, which I think is the thing that is going to put him ahead in the long run, because if you're doing, a lot of people in the Japanese version of the game are touting draw attack builds for units like Sieg. So he equips the chest piece that gives you draw attacks, which is the producer jacket, which I just saw right here. Wilhelm can't equip this. He has to use an equip clothes materia, which really sucks, and it cuts into his tankiness. It's not a deal breaker for Wilhelm at all, but it does mean that if you're doing a draw attacks build, Sieghart's gonna do it much better. The other thing that's really nice about Sieg Hart is that his provoke, DDD, is where does it say? Reduce physical damage for self for 2 turns. And this is a big deal because this is similar to why White Knight Noel is super tanky as a provoke tank. It's physical mitigation only, which means that if you have a general mitigation, it will stack on top of that. Yeah, that's what makes Sieg Hart superior as far as a physical tank goes. He has that extra layer of physical cover. Now, you can layer, for example, it's really hard to articulate and to show, honestly. But let's look at Demon Rain, for example. Demon Rain has 50% general mitigation on his provoke. If you want him to get tankier, the only way to do it is through stacking physical or magical mitigation, not general. General will not stack with this. Physical and magical mitigation is still very rare in the game. Barusa is one unit that has it, and Seaside Nickel is the other one. And Seaside Nickel is really good to synergize with these tanks like Demon Rain, Wilhelm, Mercenary Ramza, because they do have that general mitigation on their provoke. You can stack that physical and magical mitigation and increase their tankiness that way. However, with Sieg Hart and with White Knight Noel, they have physical and or magical, in White Knight Noel's case, mitigation, which means that general mitigation, which is significantly more common, stacks with it. I don't know if that all made sense. If it doesn't, let me know in the comments. But it's in large part why Zargoboth, number 1, is so good, and why he combos so well with units like Sieg Hart and White Knight Noel, because that extra 50% mitigation from his Limit Burst stacks with this provoke mitigation, but will not stack with provoke mitigation from anyone else except White Knight Noel. So, Sieg Hart, superior tankiness. He does have 2 AoE physical cover options, which is nice. He can use I'm Gorgeous, and then the following turn he can use Gorgeous Pose, which is an AoE physical cover. It has superior proc chance and superior mitigation compared to any other cover ability for physical damage, which is amazing. And then he has some offensive breaks, Block Charm and Mind Charm if you need them. And he also has Full Break Charm, which is, it's handy if you need it. Most of the time you don't. If you have a draw attacks build, you may actually end up using this more often, simply because he can do the draw attacks build, he can throw up a break, and then you have tanking and breaking covered in the first turn. Additionally, he has more cooldown skills than anyone else, a lot that help him with tankiness, earth resistance reduction. He can also, Super Wink is his magic cover. The major drawback of this one, of course, is that he cannot keep it up 100% of the time. So, for that reason, it keeps Mercenary Ramza competitive with Sieg Hart, even if Sieg Hart is tankier on the whole, because if you need a magic tank, Mercenary Ramza is going to be a better pick for it. And that's about it on his abilities. Superior passive, superior tankiness, excellent unit. But these are basically my top 5. I think if you are hurting for a tank, these 5 will give you the most bang for your buck. Guaranteed. That's my professional opinion. Now, that being said, if you already have one of these units, or one of these, never mind. If you have one of these units and you want to just use one set of UoCs to get a 7-star, go for it. These are all great units. I just wanted to talk about which ones I thought were best and why. An honorable mention has to go to the goodest boy, Chow. Where is he? Da-de-da-de-da. Because even today, he is one of the best tanks in the game. And he's only... Goodness, am I blind? Am I blind? Where is he? Is he up here? He's up here. I knew it. There he was. The good boy was hiding from me. Chow is one of the best tanks in the game. Period. He's so good. Even as a 6-star tank, he is super tanky. He has so many excellent utility skills. He can re-raise himself. He brings fortune. He can cast re-raise and full heal himself. A lot of those things are super useful. He has Kiraga and Full Life and Esunaga, which are very nice white magic abilities. And then you can equip the Holy Wand for him to dual cast them. At 7 stars, when that comes around, my bet is that they're going to give him Kuraja. And I really hope that they do, because I feel like that's a direction that tanks should go in, is to have the option of healing. And so he would actually be, even as he is with just Kuraga, he's an excellent off healer tank option with so much spirit, so much thickness. He's amazing. So somebody to keep your eye out for. If you've got your bases covered and you don't know who to use your FF UoCs on, you could always consider Chow. I'm sure he's going to be super powerful. So anyways, I'm going to reiterate once again, all of these tanks are good, okay? All of these tanks are viable for current content. All of them will be good in future content. You will see me use a whole variety of tanks because I love all of them. That being said, these are just the top 5 that I think are king of the roost, okay? They are, in my opinion, the most worth it for your UoC tickets. But that doesn't preclude you choosing any of these as well. So if you're just saying, okay, well, I just want a cover tank that can cover both things, okay, go for Lilith or go for Bosch. Nothing wrong with that. You can still also go for Merc Ramza for that. But overall, these are the 5 that I go to. Actually, I don't go to Awaken Rain that much. These are the 4 that I go to more than any others because they really are that good. So let me know. Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I'm off my rocker? Did I forget anyone? I feel like I remembered all the tanks. I certainly have all of them, so sometimes I forget. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you would like to see next time, and I will see everybody in the next video.